Shedeur throws 138 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 picks. Yet Orlovsky says Dylan Gabriel looked better. But when Arch Manning crumbles, suddenly, it's all excuses. Let me expose this lie.
Problem I have. You have the likes of Dan Orlovsky, went on ESPN First Take and hated on Shedeur Sanders in a way like no other by telling us in the audience that are listening to them that Dylan Gabriel put out a better tape than Shedeur Sanders when Shedeur Sanders made his preseason debut against the Carolina Panthers and Dylan Gabriel made his preseason debut against the Philadelphia Eagles. Despite the turnovers that Dylan Gabriel had and everything Dylan Gabriel looked shaky at, and what Shedeur Sanders did against the Carolina Panthers, where he threw for 138 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interception, and also protected the ball. And Dan Orlovsky went on national television on ESPN First Take saying that Shedeur Sanders didn't show us nothing. Dylan Gabriel put out a better tape when he got his preseason day.
You know what's absolutely wild? Dan Orlovsky went on national TV and straight up lied about Shedeur Sanders, telling everyone that Dylan Gabriel had a better preseason tape than Shedeur, even though Shedeur threw for 138 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 picks, while Gabriel was out there looking shaky with turnovers. But here's where it gets spicy. The same Dan Orlovsky who crucified Shedeur for holding the ball too long just spent 5 minutes on ESPN making every excuse in the book for Arch Manning's disaster performance against Ohio State. We're talking about a man who said Shedeur didn't show us nothing, but then turns around and blames Matt Patricia, Steve Sarkisian, and even the coverage rotations for why the so-called next Tim Tebow looked completely lost out there. The hypocrisy is so thick you could cut it with a knife, and today we're exposing every single lie this man told about our guy Shedeur.
And let's take a listen.
That way, it looked like it was a big moment for him.
Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. You know, you're going on the road to the defending national champion playing against the defense that played remarkable. I would say this, Arch Manning's game looked the way it did because number 1, Matt Patricia, the defensive coordinator for Ohio State. Number 2, Steve Sarkisian was completely outclassed. And then number 3, the Ohio State secondary was absolutely fantastic. I didn't think a lot of guys for Texas were open. You go to the first third down of the game, watch the coverage rotation that happens. And if I just freeze it right now, there's 2 guys over 1 guy defensively to offensively. Then there's 3 guys for Ohio State's defense, first 2 guys is offensively for Texas. There's nowhere to throw the football for Arch Manning other than the place that he throws the football, even though it's short of the first down. That's not great. Here we go with another 3rd and long, 3rd and 11. You're going to try to get rotation again from the top. There's no place for Arch Manning to throw the football. They've got double team, double team, double team. The only place you can do is throw the ball to the back. So you're sitting there going, well, why is the quarterback holding on to the football? Because there's nowhere to throw the ball. Rotation again, 3rd and 8. There's NFL types of coverages that are going on right now when it comes to how they're passing things off. There's nowhere for the quarterback to go with the football, and that's why everyone, myself included, is watching the game going, my goodness, why won't he let the ball go? I would say this. Arch Manning and Sark got Bill Belichicked, and I know Coach Belichick plays tonight. Arch will not see another defense that is as sophisticated, as complicated, as much they change pre-snap to post-snap. I'm not telling America that Arch didn't have some misses. Of course he had some misses. Mechanically, he got worse as the game went on. That game, in specific to Arch, went the way it did because of Matt Patricia for Ohio State.
And that's Shedeur Sanders. He's going to make the team. And every move that the Browns have made regarding Shedeur has set off Shedeur mania, Shedeur syndrome. People are championing this guy as if they believe he's Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Peyton Manning all rolled into one, okay? And I'll give you a great example of this. When he didn't play on that potential game-winning drive in the Browns preseason finale, people literally, they went to their social posts. And these are people who I actually have some respect for, and said things like, The Browns are
Listen up, because what I'm about to break down for you is exactly what's wrong with mainstream sports media today. They'll give you smoke and mirrors, they'll twist narratives, and they'll protect their golden boys while throwing the real talent under the bus. And Dan Orlovsky? He just got caught red-handed doing exactly that. See, this whole thing started when the hype machine went into overdrive for Arch Manning. Paul Feinbaum was out here calling him the best college quarterback ever, coming in and comparing him to Tim Tebow. Teams were supposedly ready to tank entire seasons just to get their hands on this kid. The Cleveland Browns. Yeah, the same Browns who drafted Shedeur in the 5th round at 144 had their entire front office at that Ohio State game. Jimmy Haslam, Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski, all of them sitting there like vultures, ready to write off both Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders for this supposed savior. But here's what nobody wants to talk about. What actually happened when the lights got bright and the pressure was on? Arch Manning didn't just struggle against Ohio State. He looked completely overwhelmed. We're talking about a kid who's been handed everything on a silver platter, who's had every advantage money can buy. And when he faced his first real test, against elite competition, he crumbled. Now, I want you to remember how Dan Orlovsky talked about Shedeur Sanders just weeks ago. This man went on ESPN First Take, national television, and told the world that Dylan Gabriel put out a better tape than Shedeur in their preseason debuts. Let me paint you the picture of how ridiculous that statement was. Shedeur Sanders steps onto the field against the Carolina Panthers in his preseason debut. What does he do? He completes pass after pass with surgical precision. 138 yards through the air, 2 beautiful touchdown passes, and here's the kicker, 0 interceptions. The man protected the football like his life depended on it. He was calm, composed, and looked every bit like a future franchise quarterback. Meanwhile, Dylan Gabriel is out there against the Philadelphia Eagles looking like he'd never played the position before. Turnovers, shaky decision-making, the whole 9 yards. But somehow, in Dan Orlovsky's twisted world, Gabriel had the better performance? Come on, man. We're not stupid out here, and it gets worse. Orlovsky sat there on national TV and said Shedeur didn't show us nothing. Nothing. Can you believe that? A quarterback who just put together a flawless debut performance didn't show us nothing, according to this clown. But wait, it gets even more insulting. They tried to base their entire evaluation of Shedeur off one bad game against the Rams. One game. Meanwhile, they're ready to crown Arch Manning the next coming of Peyton Manning based on what exactly? High school highlights and a famous last name. But here's where the hypocrisy reaches nuclear levels. Fast forward to Arch Manning's disaster class against Ohio State, and suddenly Dan Orlovsky transforms into the excuse-making champion of the world. This morning on ESPN's Get Up, this man spent 5 whole minutes explaining away every single mistake Arch Manning made. Oh, it looked like a big moment for him, Orlovsky says, trying to sound sympathetic. Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Really? That's your analysis? When Shedeur faces pressure, he's supposed to handle it perfectly, but when precious Arch Manning gets rattled, it's just part of the learning process. Then Orlovsky really gets going with the excuses. Arch Manning's game looked the way it did because of Matt Patricia, the defensive coordinator for Ohio State. Oh, so now it's the coordinator's fault? Where was this energy when y'all were criticizing Shedeur? Steve Sarkisian was completely outclassed. He continues. So the coaching is to blame too? The Ohio State secondary is absolutely fantastic, and the defense was just too good. Man, listen to yourself. You're making excuses for a quarterback who looked completely lost out there, but when Shedeur Sanders faces adversity, it's all his fault? The double standard is so obvious it's painful to watch. But here's my favorite part of Orlovsky's pathetic defense. He breaks down the film and shows how there's nowhere to throw the football for Arch Manning. He's pointing out coverage rotations, showing how receivers weren't open, explaining how the defense had NFL-type coverages. And his conclusion? That's why everyone, myself included, is watching the game going, my goodness, why won't he let the ball go? Because there's nowhere to throw the ball. Hold up, hold up, hold up. Did this man just say that Arch Manning was holding onto the ball too long because nobody was open, and that's perfectly acceptable? Because I seem to remember a certain someone, hint, his name rhymes with Shedeur Sanders, getting absolutely roasted by this same Dan Orlovsky for the exact same thing. When Shedeur holds onto the ball, it's because he's indecisive and takes too many sacks. But when Arch Manning does it, it's because the defense is too sophisticated and there's nowhere to throw the ball. The mental gymnastics here would win. Olympic gold. This is the problem with mainstream media, and Dan Orlovsky is the poster child for everything wrong with sports analysis today. They pick their favorites based on names, hype, and probably some other factors we don't need to get into, and then they twist reality to fit their narrative. But here's what really gets me fired up. Shedeur Sanders is out here proving every single doubter wrong, and they can't stand it. This young man has been carrying himself with class, making plays when it matters, and showing exactly why he deserves to be mentioned with the elite quarterbacks in this draft class. But instead of giving him his flowers, they're too busy trying to tear him down to build up their chosen ones.
Open where he missed the receivers that was wide open. See, it's a lot of smoke and mirrors. But then y'all get on Shedeur Sanders and slander him, talking about he holds on to the ball too long and that's why he gets sacked. See, that's the problem that we have. Keep the same energy, man. I understand that everybody is trying to build and hype Arch Manning up, but you got to keep that same energy when it goes for certain people, such as Shedeur Sanders. You shouldn't have to hate on Shedeur Sanders and try to derail Shedeur Sanders to make these people like Dylan Gabriel and Arch Manning look superior to Shedeur Sanders, which we know that's not the case. And see, in this situation, you're talking about, oh, he had nowhere to go with the ball. That's why he's holding on too long. See, you get away with that when you're talking about Dylan Gabriel and Arch Manning. But y'all don't keep that same energy with Shedeur. When y'all talking about, oh, his problem is he holds on to the ball too long. He takes too many ill-advised sacks because he holds on to the ball too long. And then you're making excuses that, oh, it was Matt Patricia, Steve Sarkisian, bad play calling. Y'all making all these excuses for these players that y'all want to hype up and control the narrative. But y'all want to just come out blatantly hating on Shedeur Sanders, knowing that Shedeur Sanders is the real deal. If you give Shedeur Sanders the keys and let him run the offense, you'll see what you're going to get. But to do the things that y'all do on national television, especially you, Dan Orlovsky, you was a quarterback. You know what the quarterback position entails. You know what it takes. And then you're making excuses because Arch Manning is just he's not that great, man. He's not that great. And y'all building him up. All Feinbein talking about he's the best.
And the most insulting part? Orlovsky actually had the nerve to say that Arch Manning will not see another defense that is as sophisticated, as complicated as Ohio State's. Really? So you're telling me that the kid who's supposed to be the #1 pick can't handle one sophisticated defense? What's he going to do in the NFL where every defense is sophisticated? Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders has been facing pressure and sophisticated defenses his entire college career, making throws in tight windows, extending plays with his mobility, and consistently making smart decisions with the football. But somehow, he's the one who needs to prove himself. Let me tell you what Dan Orlovsky's real problem is. He can't stand the fact that Shedeur Sanders is everything they wanted Arch Manning to be. Shedeur has the arm talent, the football IQ, the leadership, and most importantly, the mental toughness to perform when the lights are brightest. Arch Manning folded like a lawn chair the first time he faced real pressure, and you know what the craziest part is? Orlovsky was a quarterback himself. He knows exactly what it takes to play the position at the highest level. He understands the mental side of the game, the pressure, the expectations. So for him to sit there and make excuses for one quarterback while tearing down another is not just hypocritical, it's dishonest. But here's what I think is really happening. The establishment media has invested so much into the Arch Manning hype train that they can't afford for it to derail now. They've spent months, maybe even years, building this kid up as the next great thing. Paul Feinbaum calling him the best prospect since Tim Tebow, analysts projecting him as a future #1 pick, teams supposedly ready to tank for him. They've created a monster of expectations. And when reality comes crashing down, When the golden boy doesn't live up to the hype, they have two choices: admit they were wrong, or double down and make excuses. Guess which one they chose? But Shedeur Sanders? He's been grinding in the shadows, proving himself every single game, making the throws that matter, and showing the kind of leadership that you can't teach. And instead of celebrating that, instead of acknowledging that they might have underestimated him, they're trying to tear him down to prop up their false narrative. The truth is, Dan Orlovsky's lies about Shedeur Sanders just backfired in the most spectacular way possible. Every excuse he made for Arch Manning's disaster performance is the exact same excuse he should have been making for Shedeur all along. But he didn't, because Shedeur doesn't fit the narrative they're trying to push. Well, guess what? The truth has a way of coming out, and Shedeur Sanders is going to keep proving every single doubter wrong. While they're busy making excuses for their golden boy, our guy is out here putting in work and getting better every single day to here's my question for you. How long are we going to let these mainstream media clowns disrespect real talent while propping up overrated prospects? How many more times is Dan Orlovsky going to contradict himself before people start calling him out on his obvious bias? And most importantly, when Shedeur Sanders is hoisting Lombardi trophies in the NFL, while Arch Manning is struggling to find his footing, are we going to remember who had our guys back from the beginning? Because at the end of the day, talent speaks louder than hype, and Shedeur Sanders has been shouting from the rooftops while everyone else was whispering sweet nothings to their media darlings. The lies are exposed. The hypocrisy is undeniable. And Dan Orlovsky just showed the entire world exactly what kind of analyst he really is. And spoiler alert, it's not a good look. What do you think about this whole situation? Are you as tired as I am of watching mainstream media protect their golden boys while throwing real talent under the bus? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, smash that like button if you're Team Shedeur Sanders, and make sure you're subscribed, because we're going to keep calling out this nonsense every single time we see it. The truth deserves to be heard, and Shedeur Sanders deserves his respect.